You know what? I remember 2 times ago when I came in such a bad mood, like a foul mood, that it affected this for like 45 minutes. And I was like, I've been thinking about, like, if I'm going to go do a podcast, like, I like start thinking about being in a good mood like 2 hours in advance. Literally.
Well, that makes my job a whole lot easier because I do feel like I have to song and dance you into a good mood.
That's funny. I'm Josh Sigman.
And I'm Brynn Rouse.
I'm a mortgage guy with a passion for money, business, and elevating my game. Brynn is my co-host. She's my friend and marketing director for my mortgage team.
That's right. I'm a marketing girl, a mama of 3, and wife of 1. And like Josh, elevating life, business, and relationships, well, it's my jam.
This season's topic, elevate your game.
What do you want?
Do you want to push personal limits, find joy, be more present?
Be a better parent, have a sexier marriage, make more money, save more money, start your own business, develop a hobby, or strengthen important relationships?
Impact the world, be a better boss, or create a stronger business? Then you are ready to elevate.
And this is the place to do it.
Are you ready? Sigman Sense Season 3, elevate your game. All right, well, welcome back to another episode of the series of elevation in all ways, shapes, and forms, right? And welcome to Sigman Sense. So we are going to talk about elevating the culture of your team today.
Yes.
And I think that's super, super important because, we've spoken about small businesses. In fact, I think the last episode was more about elevating your small business. But at some point, you must grow through people.
Yeah.
And the quality of the people around you and how well you guys interact and how on board everyone is with the common vision and all that stuff really, really, really matters. But I think one of the most underrated areas is managing culture, understanding how you can utilize it to your advantage, understanding how just detrimental it can be when you get into that poisonous drama that happens.
Yes. And I think that a lot of times we operate culture without any sort of roadmap.
Yep.
And whatever culture we land on or end up with is kind of what we land on. And then we navigate our way through the problems that come from not having a plan.
Or you crash and burn, Mav.
Or you crash and burn.
It's going to happen one or the other, yeah.
So having a little bit of direction
Yep.
on what we're trying to accomplish culture-wise and really defining it.
Yep.
Super helpful.
Super helpful. And I'll tell you why most people end up kind of sidestepping and stepping on landmines and, learn what burns and what feels good, right? Is because most people that are small business and growing from there, the first 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 hires, it's a really tight-knit group, right? Mm-hmm. You're basically in each other's business all day, every day.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be tight. As a leader, it's easy to know what everyone's doing. So no one's getting away with stuff that they shouldn't be doing, right? Mm-hmm. It's easy to be, you think growth percentage-wise, exponential growth is easier done the smaller you are, right? If you go from, if I close 1 loan ever in my entire life, going from 1 to 2 is literally, oh my God, I grew 100%, right? That's but doing that when you're doing 500 loans a year or going from a $1 billion empire to a $3 billion empire, it's a totally different animal.
Totally
and so that first step, you're kind of managing through the 2 or 3 or 4 hires, and then you wake up and holy crap, there's 25. And when that happens, you have a whole new set of problems, right?
Right. And I would say too that when you're hiring your first 1, 2, 3, 4, it's
your friends. It seems like.
Well, I would say it's more about skill set.
Yeah.
Like this person can do the job. They have the skills that we need, which is good. It's really good.
Yep.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right culture that you want to ramp and go forward with.
I can get on board with that. What's funny is I also can think of the exact opposite. I think also the first couple hires of a number of people I know was their mom or their sister or their best friend or somebody that like, hey, can I join you kind of thing. So I don't know. We can talk about it in circles. I literally in real estate, I can, there's some great teams locally I can think of that like the first 3 or 4 hires were their buddies from the war.
Yeah.
Like literally, So
I think too, this just popped in my head that when you hire your first round of people, your first 1 or 2, you probably don't have solid footing on your leadership style or what you want.
Yep.
as far as a culture. So everybody's kind of bringing their own mix to the table, or their own style to the table, for good or bad. And so while you as the leader navigate through like, oh, I really like this. Oh, I really don't like that. You can kind of fine tune and hone. And I don't think that means that the people that you're like, oh, I don't really care for that, means that they're not a good fit. But we can certainly start,
being more specific.
Being more intentional about getting them into the zone that you want. So lots of good stuff.
And what's funny is that, this is where natural charisma serves some people better than others. This is where people that are anti-conflict get themselves in trouble. This is a point where, again, I want you to picture, maybe you've done this already and you're like, yep, did that. Yep, I did that. But you're going from a team of one to a team of infinite, whatever that number is. You're going to navigate different areas. And so what we believe is that the first step in really elevating the culture of your team is to understand what your core values are, right? So that would be the first step to elevating the culture of your team, is the core values. And so what's interesting about core values is, if you don't know what they are, they're probably the glue that's kept your team together for a number of years. If you have had a team together for a number of years, you share the same core values. If you've had some turnover with some people, it's probably because you guys didn't share some core values. And once you understand what your core values are, then it becomes a game changer, because you can hire based on them, you can fire based on them, you can reprimand based on that. You can have adult conversations around it without attacking the person. You're attacking the behavior.
It's really great, especially for people that really struggle with conflict. And it becomes very emotional to have those conversations.
Especially because you hired your best friend or your sister
or your mom. Having to correct a behavior, it gets super uncomfortable. And like, how can I ever have that conversation? I don't even know where to start. This is going to be terrible. So let's just let it go on forever. And then it becomes even worse. But the core values, being able to cite specifically.
What are they?
Where they're doing really well in the core value lineup, and then the one area or the two areas that are struggling. Really, it gives such definition to why we're having this conversation.
It's not, I don't like you, I don't like the behavior. It's not that I don't like you, I don't like the result.
Right. And, a lot of times it's when you want to discipline someone, sometimes it can be kind of hard to like pinpoint what exactly it is that they're doing that makes you want to run screaming. It's like, I don't know what it is.
I'm picturing her like literally ripping her hair out, like running the different directions.
Yes, or just crying. Just crying. Like, oh my God, I just can't handle this anymore. I don't know what it is.
I'm a sucky leader.
You're just the most annoying person on the planet. Where's that in the core values?
Right.
So, because a lot of times that's how it can feel, especially if you don't know how to address it, and it just goes on and on.
So let's define that. Let's define core values. Let's also talk about how to identify what yours are if you don't have some already within your team or company, because then then you can interview around those core values. Then you can have all these things we're diving into, which will certainly elevate the culture of the team. So here's the easiest. Core values are basically what's the best way to say it? Core values are the reason that you are who you are and the way you act with other people. They are the baselines, non-negotiables of the behaviors that you'll tolerate and you won't, right?
It's kind of the live inner workings, or the live thread, that common thread that runs through the team.
Well, or it doesn't, but it's what you want or what the leader wants, right? And so the way it's always easier to identify it when you think about, if you've been with a boss, not been with a boss, that would be horrible. That's not what I was looking for. If you've been fired by a boss, or you fired somebody, or that oh my God, you're the most annoying person ever. It's really easy to identify it when that moment happens and you look back and it's like, what exactly was the behavior that I did not like? So you think in terms of like, so I'll give ours. We always talk about our core values, and it's SOLID is the acronym we use: serve others, outstanding attitude, learn and grow, incredible initiative, and dream big. And what's happened over the years is that sometimes I had to hire multiple people pretty quickly because of the growth pattern or whatever. And I had noticed that, this person's a very, is a servant's heart, or, or this person is just like really intelligent, wants to learn more, or this person's got really, really awesome, big dreams. And yet some of those people didn't stay on the team long term because they didn't have the other core values. And so what we did was we sat down as a group of people that had been working together for about 5 years, those of us that had been working together a number of years together. And when we had some turnover, we looked at each other and said, okay, what are the adjectives to describe who we are as a group, who you are as an individual? Let's not talk about it out loud. Let's just write them all down in a long list. And then let's compare notes and see if there's any commonality. And what we found by doing that was, that these were those core values. I think 3 of the 5 came out in that first session. Serving others, outstanding attitude was one for sure, and dreaming big was one for sure. Incredible initiative didn't come up for a while, and learn and grow didn't come up. It was the most obvious one for us looking backwards. But what ends up happening is you write down these adjectives, you share it in your team, and you start, what is it that we like? And so you've got to have a litmus test, though, because there's 1,000 words that we would all like to describe us. And here's a big question mark, and a different way to add to this. It's not what you hope to be.
Right.
It's who you are, right?
Yes.
If I was a fly on the wall in your small team or your company, watching you from afar and you guys didn't know what I was watching, what would I observe, and would that match what you claim to be your core value? So people will say some things all the time that sound cool on paper, but the reason why they're never referenced, and the reason why it stays on that piece of paper in the drawer that was never looked at again other than that one meeting 30 years ago, is because it's not the living representation of who we are on a daily basis, right? And so the litmus test is twofold for me, right? So I'd really like this, but if you don't have this, would I fire you? Right? So I'll give you an example. I think personally that grittiness is the number one determinant of success, highly successful people. But not everyone at my company is gritty. I'd like them all to be gritty. I prefer gritty people, but I'm not going to fire you for not gritty as long as you do your job and you have these other attributes, right? So on the one side, if you don't have this attribute, behavior, adjective, would I fire you? Yes or no? And if the answer is, that's kind of annoying, but I wouldn't fire you, it's probably not a core value. The second thing would be, at the end of your last 5 relationships, 10 relationships, as many as you can think of back, what was it exactly, right? Like, when you got fired, what was the disparity between you and your boss? When you fired somebody, or there's one person on the team that you just literally can't stand. Why is that?
Why is it?
Right? So Incredible Initiative was one of those ones that came out of it for us, right? Because so many people on our team, or all at this point, but for years, somebody's dying at the vine, crazy busy, and some people aren't, but most of them will step back in and help the other person.
Right.
So when all of a sudden I was like, I can't stand you. You're watching TV when this person's dying. We're on a team. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Then that was easier to identify those last couple. But once you identify those and you throw them against the wall a couple of times, come back a couple of weeks later, throw it against the wall a couple more times, see what sticks, then you really get this point where the team, the core team, because you can't do this with 100 people in an exercise. It's got to be the 3 or 5 people that best exhibit who you are, what your team's all about, and where you want to go. What do you guys have in common? And what is expected? And then the question then becomes, will I only hire people that have these attributes? Will I fire people that don't?
Right.
Are we going to live and die on these couple words? So it's a really important part, but think about it. If you can actually identify those words, how much easier does hiring, interviewing, retaining people become?
Right.
Because you only hire people that are like you, that appreciate things that you value.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
more likely to stay together longer term.
Well, and what happens too is, the more in tune you are with your core values, the people that fit stick out, and the people that don't fit
dude, so
stick
true.
out big time.
And quickly.
And quickly.
So you can have shorter interviews.
Yes.
Or you can get rid of people faster if they
100%.
made it through.
Yes. And then the ones that do fit jive immediately, which is really good, because, you don't want that ramp up time of feeling like them feeling like they are part of the group, or being, or ramp up time with the team and others accepting them in. It's like, oh, you're my people. So it just,
Yep.
it really, becomes very efficient.
It does. And birds of a feather fly together. So it's
Right.
amazing how many of these people will invite their friends to come work with you too.
Absolutely.
Which half our team is
Half of our
referred in
team
by
is a
somebody.
chain.
Yep.
It's a chain effect. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So those core values then can't be, take this one step further before we move on. This elevation conversation is it can't be a one-time conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a make sure it's the real words. And there's some things I would point out that you'll see in core values that are worthless. Okay. So you can't pick a core value that is a expectation of any job, a given, right?
Yep.
Like people will say
Ethical.
stupid shit like ethical, right? Well, if you're not ethical, I'm gonna fire you. So I assume that you're ethical, right?
Yeah, let's go ahead and assume
You can go down all those kind of ad lib words that honest, ethical. What are some other ones?
I'm
that
trying to think.
I
All of those.
avoid those like the plague.
Trustworthy, like
Right.
those are all kind of going to the same category, though. I'm trying to think. Experienced, knowledgeable, professional,
Yeah. Team player.
Team player.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, you think about those. Those are kind of the givens, or they're just going to not make it.
Fun.
I think fun's a
Fun's
different.
probably
I think fun's a great core value.
Yeah.
We should actually,
But everybody
we
has-
should do a whole list of like 100 core values of that are good and 100 that are bad.
But I think fun looks different for everybody. So if I say I'm fun, that doesn't necessarily mean that
doesn't
you
mean
think I'm fun.
Well, you're fun, but you're just not funny. There's a difference. Your jokes do flop,
Funny.
and yet you hear.
Yes, I know. I really struggle with the punchline. Always.
And clearly, I am funny. But you're more fun.
You think? I don't know about that. But yeah, so I think that's a tricky one because you do want some sort of element of fun.
I have a couple of friends of mine that fun is in their core values, and that's what describes your team. So remember Shayla years ago? I showed you a video. So here's a perfect example. So one of her core values was fun, and there's this video that went out that she sent to all of her referring partners and her past clients, and it was when one of those songs that comes out that goes viral. Mm-hmm. So picture the one where you open a car door and you run outside and dance in the street and then jump back in. If you've seen those,
mm-hmm.
right? Well, they were in their office, like really, really, really nice space, and everyone they work up in like Reno and Tahoe and those areas. So the entire office is jammed out in ski clothes and toboggans and funny hats, and they're rapping and dancing on top of the conference table. So I was like, dude, if every day is like that, that place is a party. That place is fun. And they only I've spoken with their group. Every person there is fun. Like you want to hang out with that group. It's kind of a fun group.
Yeah.
So anyways, we digress. Let's go back to, that was number one. What's number two?
So the second way to elevate your team's culture would be through culture testing.
Aha.
Through culture testing.
So I want you guys to think survey.
Yeah.
So when you think about survey, it's amazing to me how many people don't do surveys at all in small businesses, but you can think of, a couple restaurants that do it. When you sign out, you can take a survey. Think about some hotels, very few these days, except for an email afterwards. Mm-hmm. Some restaurants, they'll hand you something or put it in the middle of the table. And so few actually ask the customer what their experience is like and what they would improve. Then you take it a step further. A lot of people that do survey don't actually read the results, which is super weird to me.
That's really weird.
It's the truth, though. I guarantee you in our field.
Why would they not?
Because it was a form that the company said for people to do. Whether they read it or not is up to them, right? I'm telling you, it's the truth. So survey people first, read what it has to say second. And the third piece is look for the truth in it. And I think the third step is the key, okay?
Yes.
So when we think about a culture test, I want you to think of a culture survey. What you're doing is you're literally asking 3 or 4 or 5 important questions to the team to ask them how they feel. Mm-hmm. How do they feel taken care of? How they think that they're doing, right? These are questions just to get an idea of in your job, at your space, with your leader in this company. Mm-hmm. How are you doing? How do you feel cared for? How's your leader doing for you?
What can they
do better? Right?
What can the company do better?
What can the company do better?
What can we do to be more efficient?
Oh yeah, all sorts of great questions, right? And valuable questions. And what's interesting is, when I did my first culture survey probably 8-9 years ago, I probably was thumping my chest thinking, I'm the man, like I'm like really great at culture. And I guarantee you that half were 10s and half were 2s. It was split right down the middle of I was a good leader or not. It was right when we had gotten that critical point where I just couldn't spend a lot of time with every person on the team. So what was interesting is the OGs on my team were not feeling that great because I wasn't spending as much time with them.
All the new people.
Right, all the damn new people, right?
Freaking attention.
Right, whereas prior to that, I had was time with the OGs, right? And but what's really interesting is that how I read that as a young leader also has changed compared to now too. Like I took offense at some of the things where they were said in there.
Oh, it's so easy to get hot.
Right. It's like, I do all this for you. Are you right?
Me?
You should be grateful. It's like the point of the survey is not to be
I've done this,
right.
Which is exactly what you're saying. I need how
right.
So point is what you did not land.
Right.
Did not land.
You didn't do it their way, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm serious about this, guys, because you want to close the feedback loop. Mm-hmm. Just react to something that irritates you. If you're asking for the information, take it for what it is. It's their truth. That look for the truth in it, right? It doesn't mean you have to change everything.
Right. I do want to point out too. So in the spirit of take the look for the truth in the surveys. Also look at the time at which the survey was written and how far back the person is going with their criticism. Right. So what I mean by this, if someone's having a really hard week or day or two, and at the time that the culture test is due, then you're going to get some more emotional type responses versus factual. Factual is the wrong word. More than a real picture of how they. Reaction. Yes, great way to explain it. So, not saying to dismiss it all the way, but before you get really bent out of shape,
seek first to understand.
Think through, okay, why is this coming? Why is this being written? And is it situational or is it a real thing?
Right.
And so, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it is a real thing.
Yeah.
But there's definitely times where it's like, oh, this is completely knee jerk because the test was due.
Yep.
And they had a shitty day. And
you got to catch it. Yeah. So this is the key here, right? So you ask the questions, be careful to ask if you don't want to know. Mm-hmm. So, cause it's not always going to be pleasant. And then for sure, don't react. You respond to everything, but you don't react to anything. And so, as a younger man, I would for sure react quite often from a standpoint of, are you fucking kidding me? And or ignore it altogether, which is just as bad. Mm-hmm. So the follow-up step is that you have to at least acknowledge, which is the response. It doesn't mean you have to do anything, right? So what I mean by that...
what do you mean by acknowledge?
So a couple of things come from this. So people always say, should you do an anonymous one or should you put your name on it? I would tell you that we used to do anonymous and now we do put your name on it because if you have the better your culture gets over time, the more transparent you should be and they should be with you because they know that it's a safe place.
Correct.
So when you jump down people's throats...
I'm going to be honest, when there's no names on them, all we do is sit there and try to figure out who said what.
Most of the time we can figure it out.
Most of the time it is
very
dead giveaways.
Yeah. But I think a name should be on it just because, hey, look, I'm going to give you feedback in your review. You can give me feedback as your leader, right? Mm-hmm. So with that, then you got to, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So let's just assume you're like me and you had a lot of 2s, 5s, and 7s in there, right? Mixed in. Then you can't fix culture overnight, especially if you hired some bad apples, especially if you have some people that are not aligned from a culture perspective, from a core value perspective. And I remember having this conversation with you when we were at that point where we recognized that more than half my team at this point in time did not represent our core values. I said, trust me, every future hire, we're going to hire only core values. And eventually we're going to drive these other ones away or they're going to concede and join us. Either way is fine with me. Right. But that culture test then gives you some really good cues about, this person needs more time with me, which is not a bad thing. This person needs more words of affirmation, which is not a bad thing. This person needs to feel better taken care of from the company. Whisper in the company director's ears and say, hey, dude, it's about time that you did a Christmas party for the entire company, or whatever. It gives you cues.
Small competitions along the way.
Because the cost of losing somebody, even a B player, is tremendous to try and rehire, retrain, reconfigure, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. And so this is a small thing that goes a big way. So what we're at this point, this has been years. How many years do you think I've done a culture test? 10 years? More?
Yeah, I would say about 10 years, 7 to 10.
I mean, it's got to be 10 years. Because you've been with me for what, 13 years now?
I feel like...
it's got to be 10 years
I
now.
don't know that we ever did them at the other offices. So I'm thinking maybe it's something that started 9 years ago.
Yeah, because we've been out 8 years there and one more. Okay,
yeah,
so let's call it 9 years.
Yeah.
So 9 years later, I'm at the point where I literally take the entire culture test. I have my secretary put all the positive things on one side of a piece of paper and all the negative things I've said on the other side of the paper, and I share it with the entire branch. Yeah. And I say, here's what everyone's saying that's good. Here's everything that they're saying that's bad. And then I go through the bad ones and address them and say, hey, look, I hear, there's 4 people that said this. And by the way, our last culture test, I bet you we averaged a 9.
Oh, yeah.
It was 8s to 10s.
Yes.
I bet you we averaged a solid 9. So, and there was nothing less than an 8 that I can remember on the last one. So my point is that what I would do then is say, look, even with all 8s, there's something I got to find to improve the culture. And so here's 2 or 3 things I heard 2 or 3 people say that I'm going to do something about. Here's 2 or 3 things that I see that I can't do something about yet.
Right.
But I heard you, and here's 2 or 3 things that will never change because of this reason.
Right.
Right. So that's the response piece of, I hear you. You've got to feel heard. If I expect you to vocalize again in the future, or just turn in a bullshit. Like if you've ever gotten a survey that was just all numbers and it says nothing written,
right?
They're just filling the blanks. They're not really giving you any feedback. It's not helpful, right? So if you want to keep that, hey, give me everything you can think of. Here's what I'm going to do, and make sure you follow through on it. Here's what I'm going to table, but I'm going to work on in the future. And then here's some things I can't change because here's why we do it this way.
Right. That was going to be my next point, is an explanation.
Right. Here's why we do it this way.
To as much degree as you can give an explanation. I'm thinking like a lot of things that that come up or have come up in the past, maybe at a company level.
Oh,
not a team level. And so there's only
maternity,
so much
time off.
Yeah, there's only so much control you have to redirect the entire company.
Right.
And so giving clarity on that, like here's the who, what, when, where, why of this issue. Here's where I can fit in, and I can try to start let's give those 2 examples so people can hear. I can think of 3 off the top of my head.
So I had, especially, for whatever reason, I've got a lot of young mothers on my team, and I've got one I just found out yesterday is pregnant, right?
I know.
And there was feedback from one of my teammates maybe 5 years ago that, can you believe how crappy our maternity policy is? I was like, I don't know what it is. I've never used it before. So why don't you give me more information?
Yeah.
And basically it was, you burn all your time off and then there's nothing after that, was what it was at the time.
Right.
Which looking at that, and having 3 kids myself, was like, yep, that's pretty shitty.
Yeah, because it put you in a deficit forever.
Right, forever. So as a result, I whispered in the owner's ear, and I said, hey, dude, you need to do a survey and look for this. And the same shit came up, and there was a company-wide policy change because of that.
Right.
Another one was bereavement pay.
Yeah.
We never had it. We were a small business for 18 years, right? And all of a sudden, people die.
Right.
You work with people long enough, they're going to have somebody that dies in their family, or, it just happens. And we didn't have any bereavement time off, things like that. COVID, it turned out that because we had a policy change, people got to utilize that for, to take care of their loved ones as a result, right? So that's, I hear you. I don't know if I can do anything, but I'm going to bring it up to somebody that might be able to, and so on.
For sure.
Another example was the time with me, right? So I got too big for my britches. I'm too far removed from too many people on my team. I don't have my finger on all the pulses. I love my team. I love my branch. It doesn't mean that I've got time for my branch unless I make the time. So what came out of that was, you know what? I'm just going to pick one person every single week without exception. Every Wednesday I'm going to have lunch with somebody on the team, period. And that was just a direct, instantaneous result because this was what was said. This is what I need to have happen. Another big feedback piece for me was responses to emails and communication styles in general, right? So I don't read every email. I don't read every word in every email. I just don't. So what came of it was, look, you guys understand that my deep personality, if something's not catchy in the subject line or the first line, I'm not going to see it ever. It doesn't mean I don't care. But if it's important, literally put Josh, please read in the subject line, and I will respond to you. And I do.
And you do.
And so
and I'll even
the feedback.
This is long, but still read it.
Like literally, like just give the idiot instructions,
Right.
and the idiot will follow the instructions. But that created that feedback of, are you serious, Josh? We really do that? It's like, yeah, if you just put that in there, I will for sure read it. If it's for your information, I'll eventually get around to it.
Absolutely.
But if it needs to be done today, put exclamation point, Josh, please read. So that's what that kind of creates. And so people feel heard because and valued because they gave information and we acted on it. So they're improving their working environment. And that's why you're able to take 2s and 5s and 7s to 8s, 9s, and 10s.
100%.
So that would be the culture test. What would be the third way to elevate the culture of your team?
Okay, so the third way to elevate the culture of your team is understanding the difference between EQ and IQ and learning how to, what is the best way to say it? Like the best
personality profiling would be the way I would think about
profiling. How do you improve it? How do you look for it? And better yet, how do you trust it? Like learning to trust it.
Right.
Because that's a huge one.
Yeah. So one thing I tell my friends all the time when they say, "Hey, what's most important for you to teach your kids?" It's like, look, I want my kids to be smart. I pray that they're smart kids, and so far they are. Mm-hmm. But I care more that they're street smart than they are book smart. Yes. Because it turns out that street smart people just do better in life, just survivability, right?
Yes.
And so when I think about this we could talk for 5 hours about this piece, and we're not going to, but when I think about if you're going to elevate the culture of your team, what I think about are what are some simple tools to speak people's languages, to be on their radar, for them to be on your radar. And so some examples, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, would be just teaching people personality profiling. Like that is a learned skill. You can literally teach people any number of personality profiling. The one we adopted in the early time was DISC, right? Yeah. DISC, which we have a totally different podcast about, not podcast, but different episode about in previous seasons. But what we did with that is the second step, right? So we educated our team on what DISC is. We utilize it when we hire people for sure. So we make sure we understand who we're hiring. And then on top of that, in the office settings, we literally printed up everyone's primary and secondary personalities. Yeah. So Josh is a DI, right? So what that means is talk to Josh in bullet points. Don't talk in paragraphs. Right. As opposed to, Crystal is not all DC, but C. Yeah. C. And so the C piece of it is explain the who, what, when, where, why, or how, or you're hiding something from her. Right. Right. So Josh can't be bullet pointed to Crystal. I've got to explain the who, what, when, where, why, and how to Crystal as an example. So the knowledge and teaching is the first piece of it, but then the utilization of it becomes a secondary piece within the team. And the third piece then is how do we use this to speak better to our clients to create a better client experience? So we literally, the best we can, label the personality of the person on the phone, the client on the phone, so that, if Cassie's talking to Josh, Cassie said, "Oh, Josh is definitely a D. He's very quick and he's very, fast and bullet pointed." She puts, "I think he's a D." And that way, the second person that talks to Josh doesn't have to figure it out; just gets to the point. Right. So all that is about as efficiency, obviously, a better client experience, obviously, but it's really about retention and culture, in my opinion.
Well, it plays to transparency as well, because what you'll see and start to hear is, okay, you're going way too D on me. Like, back it up. I need some more detail. And it's an easy, okay, rather than sitting there in frustration.
Josh doesn't have enough time for me.
Time, right. So it's a really easy way to keep things from festering or, because you can just,
Well, think about the eyes. Eyes just care that they're liked.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, I want to
be
your
So what have you done
one.
lately to make me feel liked? I mean, seriously.
Yes.
And we should have our team as an eye. So, it's amazing when you work, I work with all women just by accident, but I do. And it's amazing
runs
that
the world?
I notice shoes. I notice hairstyle. I actually notice every time a girl's cut their hair or colored their hair. Like I'm like, oh, looking good today. You know,
When in doubt, just bring it up.
right? But do I care about the color of shoes ever in my life? Never in my life. But I understand that some people on my team, they like to feel noticed, and that's an easy thing for us to talk about. That's just part of it.
It's just
over
part
the
of
years.
it, for sure.
That's the EQ that I'm trying to get at.
It
right?
is. Past the disc is really tactical. For me, EQ comes like deep from within. And there is definitely people who have it, and definitely people who right over heads. And so for me, as someone who has been told by multiple people that my EQ is very high.
You have very high EQ. Which, by the way, EQ is emotional intelligence, to be really clear. As opposed to IQ is, think book smart. I don't know what does IQ actually stand for?
I don't. Intelligent quotient.
Intelligence quotient, the actual number. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Which I have no idea what my IQ is. My guess is that it's probably pretty low.
Well, your EQ is very high.
It can't be everything. I can't be everything.
And I'm just a unicorn. I'm just joking.
You're right, Josh. You're right.
Very low with both.
So EQ for me comes it starts deep within my gut, deep within my soul. I can truly feel when someone is uncomfortable, when they're sad, when something's on their mind, when they're not being truthful, when there's something else going on. So and I have the tendency to be able to rise above all the things that are happening, on planet Earth, and kind of look down on the situation and be like, okay, this is truly the root of what is happening to cause the chain reactions that are happening.
Or this behavior change.
Right.
And I can't tell you how valuable this is, because I got to tell you that my EQ is not as high as Brynn's. I've developed it over the years, but it's also why when you have somebody that picks up on stuff, guess who I have interview every single person for my team? Yes, I do a short interview, but I rely very heavily on Brynn to do interviews because she's got a really good EQ, and she'll pick up on the bullshit that people are throwing at us in interviews. Same thing with when businesses are moving quickly, typically when they're going well, by the way, not when they're not going well, when they're going well and moving quickly. It's weird that every time things are going great, when it's the same period of time, I look at Brynn's I'm waiting for a shoe to drop. I don't know why, but it's just the truth. And so the EQ meters on people, mine is up, Brynn's is up. Got several people on the team that I very heavily rely on to say, hey, you need to go give so-and-so a hug. Something's off over there. My gut's telling me that she's interviewing with other companies or whatever. That's my gut. I can't tell you why I know that. That's what EQ is, right?
It is. And so I think where you start to improve in EQ is it goes back to active listening, which we have an entire episode on.
Yes.
And to do that, you have to slow down.
Yep.
So slow down, observe people's be present, observe people's body language, understand how to differentiate between a bad day or moment or situation that's happening in their life versus a fundamental problem. And then having the confidence and finding a way to bring it up to someone hey, I noticed that you were a little bit off at lunch today. I hope I'm not overstepping. I just wanted, it could be nothing, but I just want you to know that I'm here.
I love that you said that. So the people are like, well, how do you train yourself, Josh? So we talked about it in a different episode, the ones, the tens, and the hundreds. That's how I literally train myself. So what it really is stop having shallow conversations, which the average conversation is,
how's the weather?
Hi, how are you doing? I'm good.
How are you today?
Right.
Good.
And it's one word and you don't really care. It's just you feel like you have to say something. 10-level conversations are those conversations that you bring up, hey, how was Walker's baseball game? So you bring up something that matters, carrying on a previous conversation.
Yes.
That's about it, though. And level 100 conversations are noticing or talking about something that pulls on heartstrings, right? And so what I've gotten the habit of saying is, and everyone I think picks up on it, people are uncomfortable to say the next thing. And so Now, whenever I see somebody that I think is a little off, stranger or otherwise, personal friend, family member, I say, what's going on?
Yeah.
Are you okay? No, I'm fine. You're going to say I'm fine. No, seriously, you seem like you're off. What's up?
You're off. Yeah.
And I just, the probing of 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
go back at it, because I can't tell you how many times I've like had a really deep, impactful conversation with a stranger because I cared enough just to go with my gut and say, yep, something's off. So something's wrong. We got to talk about this more. But think about this about the culture of your team. There was a movie with, this popped in my head. There's a movie with Mel Gibson, What Women Want.
Oh, it's such a good movie.
And it's a movie where he can hear what women are thinking, which is, I don't know if that's a gift or a curse. I'm not sure.
I mean, it can definitely be either.
It could definitely be either. So go watch the movie. But there's a girl that is doing her job, does her job really well in the working place, and she's literally thinking about killing herself every single day.
Yeah.
So this one day, she doesn't show up at work, and he goes to the house and finds her, goes to that girl's house, and sure enough, the girl was about to kill herself, and all he said was, hey, I was thinking about something we talked about 2 years ago, and I want to know if you want this other job, and just made her feel noticed and made her feel heard.
Yeah.
So what's the moral of the story? When somebody's having a bad day, if you as a leader or a teammate can show up and just say, hey, you seem off. They feel noticed, and that's half the battle, right? Yeah. And if you can listen to them and maybe help, great. Sometimes just listening's enough. And that's the last piece I would talk about in this area, which would be primarily geared towards men, but women need this too. Understanding the difference between a 411 and a 911 is something that I had to learn as well. So again, I might ask a question, and Brynn might feel compelled as my employee to answer the question if I ask her 3 or 4 times. It doesn't mean that she wants to, nor does she expect me to fix said problem, right? So the difference, I want you to think of the old school, 411 is information in a telephone, 911 is dial in case of emergency. And so speaking with Christy, my wife, or an employee, when it's starting to get a little weird in the conversation, like, oh my God, I am naturally a fixer.
Right.
So if you're naturally a fixer, it does not mean that they want you to fix their shit, or they just won't tell you next time. And so they're starting to say, oh, is this a information only thing?
Yeah.
Or is this and I can think of a half a dozen times in the last couple of years even you and I have had this, like, I'm not sure, like, I'm here, I'm listening. Do you want me to do something?
Yeah. And I think this becomes important. Like, so we have a rule that you can only bitch upwards.
Yes.
So, which means Josh is the one person above me
that you can bitch
that I can bitch to.
So sometimes she bitches, and I'm like, oh my God, do I need
to
do
it? So if you're going to go and bitch up rather than down, meaning me as who I am on the team, I don't want to go down and bitch to my team. Like that would be bitching down, because it just poisons the waters, right? And puts your frustrations into their mind. Yep. And guess what? Now
the whole team
can be pissed off about it, which is just awesome. So if you're going to bitch up, then you have to clarify, just a 411, I'm just venting. I really don't need you to do anything. This will fix it. The venting session will cure what I'm pissed off about. So don't jump into action.
And what's really interesting too, from this is elevating your culture. Like, leadership is quite often a lonely place, right? So if you're a mid-level manager, as an example, sometimes just the ability to say it out loud helps you come up with a solution or become more convicted in what you're going to do, which might be challenging or difficult or emotionally, I'm going to have to talk to that friend in a really, direct way. And, you're always risking a relationship when you do that, right? Mm-hmm. And so, hey, this is Joshua. We want to give you a heads up in case somebody calls you. This is what's going on. I got a plan. I'm going to talk to this person on this date, but just giving you a heads up. And it's like, okay, it's good for me to know in case I watch this person walk out, crying. At least I know.
At least
I'm not supposed to do anything, right? Mm-hmm. So great. What is the next way you can elevate the culture of a team?
Okay, so the next way to elevate the culture of your team is understanding the love languages.
So true.
So there's a book called The 5 Love Languages that is definitely made for relationships, which if you have not read it, I would highly recommend reading it. The idea is that each one of us has a love language, that when people play to that love language, we 100% receive it, hear it, see it, and get what is happening. However, if we have someone that is playing to, so what happens most often is we'll take spouses.
So the 5 love languages are, for the record,
good point.
Physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and gifts. That's for a relationship with a spouse.
Right. So if I am words of affirmation and quality time, and Randy is gifts and acts of service, then what we are most prone to do is to show love in the way that we receive love. And so if he's constantly buying me gifts because that's what he likes, and I'm like, just tell me I'm awesome and spend some time with me, we're constantly on different levels.
So what she's saying is that you tend to love people the way you like to be loved, which means it falls on deaf ears.
100%.
That's the problem.
Lots of wheels spinning, lots of look how much I'm doing for you, and you are not reciprocating.
Because that's not how they feel love.
Right. So understanding the way that people receive love is really important. And as it turns out, there is a workplace and a children's love languages. And so understanding everyone's love language at work helps you tailor what you're doing for them.
And very similar things, even physical touch, obviously non-sexual physical touch.
Yeah, high fives, pats on the back.
Hugs and high fives, absolutely. So, and again, the tactic, what do you do with that? So go read the book, go give the book to your entire team, and then have everyone take the free test in the book.
Yes.
And then post it.
It goes underneath the disc scores.
So yeah, literally in the office, you have everyone's, disc letters, and then you have their love language. And we do that intentionally because if I walk by a desk and I see words of affirmation, I will see that before I catch the eye contact, and I can think really quickly about, is there anything that I can recognize right now on? It gives me a leg up in improving the culture of the team because, oh my God, my boss noticed this, and bam,
because you're playing to it. It's again,
or a small gift, Katie, my secretary. I literally go out of my way to find little gifts on vacations now because I didn't realize just how much, some people's love languages are spread out a little bit, nothing really powerful. For her, I get her a little gift showing that I thought about her when I was, on trip with my family or whatever, is such a big deal to her.
Yeah.
Puzzles. So I buy puzzles for her all the time now because she likes to do puzzles, anyways.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the fourth one. And that's a very easy, you don't have to listen to this episode, read the book. It's a short book, but it's called The 5 Love Languages at Work. And that can help improve the culture team. So the last step, the 5th step to elevating the culture of your team is what?
To have a actual culture committee.
Weird.
I know.
So meaning I am not gifted. I'm being direct. I am not gifted at culture. I work really hard on it. I surround myself with really great people, but I want Brynn to go into detail on this because it was her idea years ago to do this. And basically what I knew is I love my team, but my team doesn't feel loved based on the culture surveys that I actually read and heard and listened to. And I was, if I have an extra 20 minutes to do something, I'm a producer, so I'm going to go sell something and call somebody. I'm not naturally hardwired to remembering a birthday or remembering a vacation or whatever. But I'm willing to give money and time of my team to make sure that all that's taken care of. So what does a culture committee look like?
Yeah. The other thing about culture committees is that it's as your team grows, it's really hard to know what's important to everyone. The best example of this is through the culture committee, we found out that.
Well, what is the culture committee and how do we do it?
Sorry. So the culture committee is someone on the team that is a really good example of the culture that you're looking for.
Right. And it's volunteer, by the way.
And it's volunteer, heads up the culture committee. Meaning they run the meetings that are going to be had, and then we encourage as many people as want to be on it as a part of the group. We typically have about half of the team that is on the culture committee. They meet once a month or once every other month, and basically it's to cover 3 main areas. First one would be, what are we doing for internal celebrations, meaning birthdays, milestones, babies, anniversaries,
vacations,
bucket list trips. If someone's sick, what are we doing there? The next one would be, what are we doing to improve the culture of our team as a whole, as far as what's our next team outing? What's our next initiative? What are we doing for Halloween? How are we, doing that? What are we doing for Christmas? And then the third one would be philanthropy. So what kind of charitable involvement do we want to have? What are we doing when? What's coming up? And typically we try to do something, I would say we solid probably twice a year. as a high once a quarter. So, and it ranges. And this is what I mean by like, you don't really know what's important to everyone if you're not focused on it. I can remember specifically like Arbor Day. Someone wanted like to plant a tree or plant a flower.
It was Earth Day.
Earth Day.
It was Earth Day.
Earth Day.
Yeah. So literally, my only job as the boss was to give a budget to it and to encourage it. And no matter what they came up with, I have to participate in it.
Yeah.
That's really the only job of the boss, right? So I can't I participate in the culture committee.
Yes.
I'm going to fund it, encourage it, and participate.
Yes. And I couldn't do it either outside of what Josh just said because it was my idea. So like getting other people involved.
Right. And so I gave this budget, and I literally thought, oh, this is stupid. Like they just talked me into a bar tab every month because I got a monthly, amount of money that I was going to give to this culture committee, whatever they want to do it. And literally the culture committee chose to buy and plant a tree.
Yeah.
And that's what they wanted at the office. They wanted to have a tree, and it's literally, I'm looking down, it's right there. And I was blown away. I was like, holy crap. Like, and I'm an outdoorsman. And I was like, I really appreciated the fact that they would, I would never have thought of that in a million years.
Ever.
But that's what a culture committee is. And so if you are not the person that, and somebody listening is like, oh my God, I can remember everyone's birthday on my team. Dude, I have to like have it on a calendar, and then I still have my secretary text me every single day to remind me who to call and when to do it.
And what is our plan for birthdays? Because this is where things get really wonky and people get really bent out of shape is if you do something for one person's birthday and then something different for another's, people get bent out of shape.
Yeah. And then the boss just stops doing it altogether because it becomes, one bad feedback. It's like, screw it. I was trying to do a good thing and you guys gave me bad feedback on it.
Exactly. So coming up with the formula. So the desk is decorated. They get a X dollar amount gift card.
Yep.
And the team signs the card, whatever. And that is the birthday plan. So everybody knows what to expect.
Yep.
It's even and fair. It's just the formula.
Well, speaking of the formula, I would say that we just came up with a great formula to elevate the culture of your team. So my hope is that if you heard one or multiple that you could do a better job at, that you implement this. And I guarantee you, while it does take some time, energy, effort, and sometimes some money and resources, it is absolutely worth it because the goal long-term is to remove the drama, remove the turnover, make hiring, firing, adult conversations easier, generally just enjoy and love the people you work with because we work and live with those people as much as or more than our own families. And so it's
the other thing this does too is help with recruitment.
Oh, absolutely.
Big time with recruitment because people that are happy about work are posting about work. They're talking about it at family functions and
birds of a feather fly together.
And then guess what? Here comes the next person. Yeah.
So we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Absolutely.
How do you want to finish this off?
So I would love for you to click the subscribe button if you haven't. Be sure to also check out our Short Sense page where you can get 3 to 5 minutes of every episode. That's a little quicker to digest for your daily content and motivation. And then find us on all the social platforms.
All the social platforms.
I mean, all of them.
Please keep in touch. And we'll see you next time on Sigman Sense, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers.